This tutorial is important because if you have never used layout grids before on Figma, what you are missing on is actually the following. So let's say let's say we create a frame first, F, and let's name this overview. And what you are missing is basically, let's create another frame and let's give this a color of like something like red. And let's inside here put some texts like label 1. And I'm gonna make this out of it. And I'm gonna then copy, and this is label 2. Okay, what you are trying to do in UI design when you actually began putting your hand on the keyboard is you are making decisions on which elements are much more important for the user to notice. So you are trying to either create contrast or similarity between two elements. And that's how you use consistency spacing, such as if we have these two labels and we are making a list and we create a third one, it is important that each label is spaced vertically equal to 25 pixels, 25 pixels. And the problem is, it is very hard to do this by just going through and clicking on each element and pressing Alt and checking if it is actually spaced equally. And it's also very hard to do this for every element. And that is where layout grids come in handy. For example, if I selected this frame and I go to, let's say, layout grid, and I have to make the color here a bit darker. And right now you can see it on the grid version, meaning that it's just showing me grid squares. But you can also pick others such as columns or rows. Let's pick the column. So column is for your vertical alignment and spacing. And let's pick, let's say 5. And the margins to its left and right to be 24. So here is 24 pixels. Here is 24 pixels. And gutter is 16. Now what I can do is I can actually align these elements here, and vertically my left and right, they are now aligned, they are not, and I can see if they are aligned or not much more easier. Not only does it help me to correct its position, it's also helping me to basically see instantly if the position of my element is correct compared to other elements. And this is for the columns. What you want to also do is you probably want to also use rows so that you can do the vertical and horizontal alignment and spacing. So you want to pick the second one as rows, and you probably want to pick it a different color such as blue. And you also want this to be 20%. For your rows, what I advise is maybe make the count, let's say 50, and instead of make it center so that it doesn't stretch, so you can actually give it a fixed height. Give it 8 pixel height, and the gutter, meaning the spacing between each row, is also 8. So now what you see is, I'm gonna zoom in, we have 8 pixel of a row, 8 pixel gutter space, 8 pixel, etc., till the end of the frame. And what this will help you is that it will also help you move along elements much more easier. And you really want to have a 4 pixel, 8 pixel, or 16 pixel, basically multiples of 4, because if you are working with mobile or desktop or tablet, any kind of a technological device, usually multiples of 4 is used for spacing UI elements, which is why I advise you to pick your grids to be actually 8 pixels, which is a good number. And once you do that, you can see here how we can play. So now, if I put it here, I can actually gauge the distance between these two elements to be let's say 2 rows here, right? Because row and the gutter is equal. So I can also get this to be around 2 rows as well, and they are actually equal. And thanks to my columns, I know they are left aligned because I'm checking it with the red column here, and that looks pretty good. Maybe all of them need to go 2 pixels to the left. And yeah, that looks pretty good. So that is actually the overview of what you can do with the layout grids. One more thing before we actually finish this overview and go on to design our actual website and the mobile version of it, is you can actually change your preference for the nudging your elements. What do I mean by nudging? So let's say we actually clicked on the label 1, right? And we can change its coordinates by moving it around here, or just increasing or decreasing with the coordinates in the right side, X or Y. Now, if I'm pressing my chevron up or down, it's moving up or down regarding the X coordinate. But if I press Shift for a Figma shortcut, it's gonna move 10 pixels to the right and 10 pixels to the left if I press the down. So we can actually change this to be a specific value that is equal to our grid, which is 8 pixels, by going to main menu, and you wanna go preference, nudge amount, and you want this to be 8. So now it will always nudge to the same amount. So you can see what I mean here. As you can see here, we are here, and I can now nudge only 8 pixels, and I'm going up along the row that we just created, and that's beautiful, and that makes it very easy to align and space elements. Alright, so let's go on and create the desktop version first of this landing page, and we are going to use our layout grids. As you can see, I'm going to press Ctrl-Shift-4, and these are the layout grids we are going to use. But to do this, I'm going to first press F to create a frame, and I'm going to draw, and it's going to be 1440 because this is a desktop width, and it's going to have roughly 800 pixels. And this is going to be the landing page desktop, copy. And the first thing I'm going to do before actually inserting our layout grids is I'm going to put the image in the background for the hero section. So I'm going to right click, go to plugins, and go to Unsplash. And again, guys, if you do not have the Figma plugin Unsplash, I advise you to actually install this plugin, and there are other 5 to 10 Figma plugins that I believe that will make your work much more productive. So if you don't know which are which, if you don't know many of these plugins and don't know how to use them, please click on the info card on this video right now. That will take you to my Figma plugins video, where I will go over 10 to 15 Figma plugins that will improve your productivity as a UI UX designer. But if not, let's go on here. I will click Unsplash, which will let me pick images without leaving the Figma and use them right here. And I'm gonna search for dance. And I am gonna pick this one. And I probably want the overlay because there's a lot of white here. So I'm gonna get an overlay of 20%. And then I'm gonna rename this again. Landing page desktop, copy. And then what I'm going to do is I'm gonna add my layouts. So I'm gonna add a layout grid, but the first thing I'm gonna add is I'm gonna make this a column. Now, because we are designing desktop, you want to have roughly 12 columns, as this is the best number to hand off to your devs. I want this 20%. And our margin for left and right, I want them to be roughly 96 pixels. And I want our gutter to be 24 pixels. And that looks pretty good. And then I am gonna add the rows here. And for rows, I really want to make this row, not grid. I wanna make this like 60. Let's go over the top. I want this to be blue so that I can separate it from the columns. 20%. I want it to be centered so I can pick a specific height. 8 pixels for height, 8 pixels difference between each row. So that looks pretty good. Now I'm gonna zoom in. And that looks pretty good. All right. Right, now that we have actually added our layouts for the desktop version of our design, we can go and create the navigation. So I'm going to press T for the text shortcut. I'm going to do design school. And this is going to be on Minion Pro font. And I want this to be 24 pixels. I want this to be, I want this to be auto width. And I want the second part of this to be bolded, Control B. And then I want to drag it here. And I want each page links to be 16 pixels height, completely unbolded. And I will make this home. Then I will drag it. This can be, let's see what we have. We have home, about, schedule, contact. Home, about, then schedule, contact. All right, so that works. So I'm gonna select all of these, and I'm gonna change their font family to Inter instead of the Minion Pro. And I am actually gonna put these guys in a frame, Ctrl+G. I'm gonna name these page links. And then I'm gonna grab the page links and the logo here. I'm gonna frame them as well. And I'm gonna name this top navigation. And what I'm gonna do here is I actually am gonna give this parent frame an auto layout. And if you don't know how to use auto layouts and you want to learn more, not just by watching this video, but you want to go in depth, please click on the info card appearing right now on this video, where I'm actually giving you a link to a video I posted about the Figma auto layouts that goes way more in depth than this video. And I believe it could be very helpful if you don't know what I'm talking about. But let's go press the auto layout. And let's give this let's make this first space between. We want to be with 1440, and we really want this to be 0. And then we want the left margin to be 96 pixels, so it sits on the first column. And we want the right margin to be 96 pixels as well. And we want this to be centered, and that's pretty good. And maybe let's get 16 pixels up, 16 pixels down, and we want 0. Why? That looks pretty good. And now, the reason I made the page links a frame is we are gonna add an auto layout here as well. And I want these to be maybe 24 pixels, maybe 32 even. And I want this to be contact, and I'm just checking now. And yes, in terms of the column, it sits at the right here, and it there. By using the rows, I'm checking where they are beginning in their baseline, and that looks pretty good. And yeah, that looks pretty good to me in terms of navigation. Let's move on to this main value proposition. So I'm gonna press T, and I'm gonna look for dance with all your might. So dance with all your might, and this is gonna be Minion Pro, probably around 48 pixels, and we probably want this to be bolded. And I'm gonna check here. So it takes 4 columns, so maybe a bit higher, maybe 56. And around, yeah, maybe 48 actually worked. So yeah, I think 48. It might be even bigger, maybe 42. Yeah, maybe somewhere around here, 45. Yeah, maybe 45, and auto is good. I kind of like this, and let's check what's the actual. Well, it's 48. Okay, and why did our 48 not work? I think I did a spacing mistake. Dance with all your might. I think I did a spacing mistake. Somewhere around here is double spacing, but that's okay. And then I'm gonna press T, and I want lorem ipsum, so I'm gonna go plugins, and I'm gonna go lorem ipsum, and I want 2 sentences here, and I definitely want these to be maybe 20. I want inter, and I do not want them to be bold, and that looks pretty good. And then I want my CTAs to learn more, and then we have a video preview. So to do that, I'm gonna press F to create a frame for the button. And inside that frame, I'm gonna press T. And I'm gonna write learn more. I'm gonna make this an auto width. And then what I can do here is I am gonna get an auto layout for this button, and I want this to be maybe 12 pixels top, 12, 18, 18, and I probably wanna add a center, fill, and my fill color is probably going to be this blue here. And I do not want to add any border radius because the branding seems to be serious and high class, so I don't want this to be playful or fun. So I'm not going to add any border radius here. And that looks pretty good, 48 pixel height. And then what I can do is I am going to name this as CTA button. And then I am going to press O for the video circle, and I'm gonna name this 48, and I'm gonna press I to pick its color, and I'm gonna pick that color as well. So that looks good. I'm gonna right click, plugins, go to Feather Icons to fetch pre-made icons. This is an icon library, and I'm gonna search for play, and I'm gonna put this right in here. I'm gonna press Shift X to switch its value. I am gonna go to the play here and gonna make this, gonna press Shift X to switch, and boom, yes, that looks pretty good. So I'm gonna move this inside the landing page, and let's check if that is centered. Yep, that is not. Let's check. Nope. We need to come back 3 pixels here, and that is centered. So maybe it looks a bit odd to my eye, so I'm gonna edit here. Yeah, now that looks centered. Even though mathematically it doesn't look centered, I think to my eye this looks more centered. And I'm gonna trust my eye. I'm gonna press Ctrl-Alt-G to make this a frame, and the frame is going to be play button. And then I am gonna press T for the text just near it, which is gonna be watch how it works. And I'm gonna make this auto, and I'm gonna make this 18, maybe here. It looks pretty good. And because this is a secondary text, I'm gonna look at my body text, which is 20 pixels, and I'm just gonna subtract 2. And now I'm gonna use my layout grids to actually align these elements. So what I'm gonna do is I am gonna check. Roughly there is 4, 6, so 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13. So I want 12 here. And I'm gonna make this to the baseline right there. And I want these to have roughly 32 pixels, so around 4. So around here should work. And I am checking here. That looks pretty good. I think this can be a bit here, yes. And then there's 4, so that's 32 pixel difference. And I want this to have maybe 3, so I'm gonna get this 1, 2, 3 rows. So it should be around here. And that should be around here. And that looks pretty good. Now, one thing we might do is we might even add more space. So instead of actually having 4, we might go maybe 5. So I can always go 5, maybe 6. That's 48 pixels. But if we are going to do that, we have to space these also a bit here. So maybe 24 pixel difference between them, or 32. So 4 rows between. So maybe 1 more up. 2, 4. Yeah. And this should be its height, and that is around 32 pixels. Yeah, I think That might look more spacious, but that kind of looks better to my eyes. This one is too, there's not enough space in the first version that I designed. This looks a bit better. And then I want the difference to be 24 pixels is actually pretty good for desktop. And I want these to have maybe 12. And that looks pretty good to me. I'm checking 100%. That looks pretty good. And then what I can do is I'm going to design the, oh, before we go on, I want this to be bolded because we're at the home page. And then I'm gonna design the forum here so that the user can sign up. So I'm gonna press F for frame. And this is the only part where we are actually going against our layout grid. So I'm not placing the frame inside the columns but to the right edge, which also means I am breaking the alignment, and that is intentional. Thanks to the layouts, we can make everything consistent, and when we want a certain element, and in our case for our conversion's sake it would be the form sign up, I can actually break the consistency so that the user's attention will go much more to the form visually. So I'm breaking the consistency. I'm going to add a fill here, and I'm going to add the full color to be, let's see, I'm going to copy this color and I'm gonna edit right here, and this should be roughly 8%, and I'm gonna do Ctrl+Shift+4 just to get rid of it for now, because this should be actually bigger, and Ctrl+Shift+4 again for the layout grid, because I want this to, so if you look at it, it's ending at the first 4, so this also lets me resize here pretty well. Okay. Yep, and that looks pretty good. Okay, that looks pretty good. All right, so then I think I'm gonna give it a bit more space. So I'm gonna give this a bit more space here, maybe this much. I'm gonna press T for writing the form header, get started with free trial for 14 days. I'm gonna make this auto width, and I'm definitely gonna make this Minion Pro. And I'm definitely gonna pick 20 pixels. So maybe 20 pixels, definitely bold. And then I'm gonna do my rectangles here for the email and the last name. So I'm gonna do R. And I'm gonna press Shift X to swap the stroke with the fill. Want this to be 48 pixels. And I'm gonna drag this here. Maybe add a placeholder here. So I'm gonna get rid of the Shift+4 text, and this would be your name, and this would be enter, and this would be roughly 14 pixels. My bad, that's too much. 14 pixels, and that should be centered around here, and that looks pretty good. That looks pretty good. And then I'm gonna select both of them and frame it, and this should be name field, and the parent should be form. And then I am gonna make this FF for white. That looks pretty good. And maybe what we can do is we can move everything here. Yeah. So I'm gonna just 3, 4, 5. Okay. So that looks pretty good so far. So maybe even 20 pixels might not be big enough. So 24 maybe. Yeah, 24 looks pretty good. I'm gonna get the rectangle to be maybe 348. And I'm gonna check here, maybe even bigger. So maybe I'm gonna get rid of the rectangle. I'm gonna make the Shift X because I want to resize the frame. I'm gonna match its height with the title there, and I'm gonna press Alt, and that's pretty good. And I want to see the layout grid to actually create the margins here. So that is roughly 32 pixels, and these should be roughly 16 because they are in the same, maybe 24 because they are in the same group. That's good, and this should be your email. Yep, and then I'm gonna create the sign up button. So for the sign up button, I'm gonna do auto layout. And what I'm gonna do is I am going to make a fixed width and fixed center. And I'm gonna pick the width to be 389 pixels. And I want the label to be at the center. And it should be sign up. It should be bolded. And its color should be, press I, and Control Shift 4, gonna press I. It's added the stroke, so maybe Shift X, and yes, that looks pretty good actually. So that is a bit darker, but that's fine. I think maybe if we go lower here, no, maybe 90%. Okay, maybe 80%. I think 80% looks the best. Yeah, I think 80% looks the best, and that looks pretty good. Now, our blue there is a lot more better. So, because our blue is at the, okay, because we need to frame these so they can appear, so that they don't take the parent's transparency value. So Control Alt G. This is the content, and that's 100%. And I'm checking here, why is this one looking more? So that's 60 pixels. Okay, I am using the same color. So if I do 60, they look even worse. So why is that? Let me think. One moment. Okay, so here's what we can do. So that's actually wrong design on that one. So how we are gonna solve this problem is, I'm gonna take the content outside of the form. And what I can do here is, so now that everything is appearing much more, I'm gonna name this form content. This can be form background, and then we can frame these two together, and that will be the form. Okay, that solves it. And that's, yeah, I think that solves it. That looks pretty good to me. Yeah, I think that works. So that is our desktop design, guys. Right, so let's design the mobile version. So I'm gonna press F, and I'm gonna pick iPhone 13 mini here, and I'm gonna fill its color with the, basically maybe a dark color that we see here. And then what I'm going to do is, I am gonna press T. For our top navigation, I'm gonna write then school, and I'm gonna get this to be maybe 18, again maybe 18 pixels this time, and Minion Pro. And I'm gonna zoom in here, Shift 2, and here school, and I'm gonna pick the second part bolded, and I'm gonna auto width this. All right, that looks pretty good. Then I'm gonna press right click here, plugins, and I'm gonna fetch my hamburger menu. So hamburger, just gonna put it there, and it's right here. I'm gonna put it inside our home mobile copy, and I'm gonna give this the color of white, and that's good. So what I can do now is I am gonna frame this again, but before that what we can do is we are gonna add the layout grids. So for mobile, what we probably wanna do is we are gonna go columns, but instead of doing 12 columns like desktop, we wanna do 5, which is the most general you can use in the mobile design. And you wanna have 16 pixels left and right, and probably 16 pixels also between each element, between each column, so for the gutter. And then I'm gonna add the rows as well, and rows should be maybe again 60. Center, gutter and height is the same, and the color should be around blue, 20%, and the column should also be 20%. Okay, so now we can actually frame the hamburger menu and logo. Alt G, top nav, and what I want to do is I am gonna give these guys 340. So if we are gonna have left and right 16, 16, 32, this frame should have roughly 343 pixels. So 343 pixels, and maybe it can even have 375, and we can have the margin. So I'm gonna auto layout, and I'm gonna make sure they are centered together. And I am going to basically pick space between. So instead of specifying the margins between, I just want each element to stretch. I want each element to be left and right, and space is going to be decided by the whole element's width. So if I set the width to be 375 pixels, and then 16 left, 16 right, and 0 here, boom. And again, if you don't know how to use auto layout, please click on above the info card that is appearing so you can learn more in depth of what I just did here. And it's a very good Figma feature, and I believe you can learn a lot from the video there. So let's continue, and let's add our image now. So I'm gonna press F for the frame where our image will go in. Click plugins, and I'm looking for Unsplash, and we are looking for the same image, dance. And yep, and I'm gonna add an overlay of 20% again. And I'm gonna get rid of the layout grid by Ctrl+Shift+4 because I want to see the screen. Okay, that's how it looks right now. And I want to stretch this, and I want to get the top nav above, because if you can see here on mobile, and this logo is too big, but on mobile our image is taking also the vertical space for our logo's background as well. So that looks pretty good. Then I'm gonna add dance with all your might, dance with our value proposition might, and that would probably be bolded, and probably would be like 28 pixels. Yeah, I think it will be 28 pixels, and it might even be bigger, maybe 32. Yeah, that looks better. And then what we can do is we can go fetch this text, Ctrl+C, and I'm gonna copy it just here, and it is too big for mobile, so maybe 16 pixels. and it will be around here. I'm going to press Ctrl Alt 4 to see my alignment, and I think that's 16, that is 16 too. And let's check our alignment here, and that is around, let's do maybe 16 pixels per element, and in the above I want probably 32. Let's give some space to 4 rows. So I want 4 rows above. I'm gonna look at where the D ends here, which is there, and then it should be around here. So this is around 16 pixels, and I'm gonna get the line height here to the base here, and then we are gonna get our CTA buttons. So learn more. So I'm gonna press F again with T, and I'm gonna write learn more. I'm gonna auto width this, and I'm gonna write CTA button, and I will add an auto layout like the desktop, center its content. Let's do 8, 8, 8, 8. One difference will be for this one, this will be 14 pixels. And I want the frame to actually have the full color of, let's press I, that blue. And right now it's 33 pixels. It can be a bit higher, maybe 37, and a bit longer here. Yeah, that looks better. And I want this to be pretty close, so maybe around here. Yeah, so I want it to be closer to the paragraph than it is. And then I'm gonna press O for the video icon. I want this to be 36 pixels to match the height of the Learn More button. Press I to pick a color, and we're gonna right click, plugins, feather icons, and I'm gonna pick play, and I'm gonna move the play into our frame, and I move it here. Gonna move Shift X, and I'm gonna make its color FFF, and that looks a bit smaller, so I'm gonna get this to be maybe 14. Yeah, and I'm gonna get it to be around here. Yeah, maybe 1 pixel above. Yeah, and one better way to do this is you can always use the plugin icon resizer, and if you install this, what you can do is I want max to be here. So this is the icon width or height that is max, and we want the box size to be 24 pixels. And that would center automatically for you, and maybe 1 pixel, right? Yeah, and that looks pretty good. Ctrl Shift 4 again. So these guys, let's pick the center. Let's pick the ellipse here. I am gonna group the play. Gonna frame this. Video CTA. Press T to get the text here. Watch how it works. Gonna press T again. Automatic. Gonna get it 14 pixels. Yeah, and gonna use my layout grid to center it here. That looks pretty good. That looks pretty good actually. Ctrl Shift 4 just to see how it looks like. I think we can use a bit of the spacing a bit more. So maybe we can increase our margins here, because so we can get this to be 8 pixels lower, and we can get these guys to be 8 pixels lower as well. And let's frame this as well. So this is CTA row, and what's the distance between this is 12, and that should be 8. Yes. And let's look, Ctrl-Shift-4. And again, it could still be lower, so I'm gonna just go like this. And I'm experimenting visually. And maybe here. So let's count here. So that's 2, 4, 5, 5.5, so 40, 45 pixels. And this is 24 pixels, almost half of it. And this should definitely be bigger. So this is also gonna come down. Yeah, so maybe around here. Yeah, I think around here works the best for spacing. And yeah, now I'm gonna do the form. And I want this height to be around here, where we will have a 16 pixel. So I'm gonna trying to get the 16 pixel here. So maybe 293. So we have the 16 pixel left and bottom. That's good. Then I am gonna add I'm gonna add F for the form content. So I'm gonna get it here. This is the form. And inside here will be text. Get started with free trial for 14 days. We want this to be Minion Pro. Definitely 18 pixels maybe. Yep. And maybe we want this to be EG. That works. And the second E here should be downcase. Yep. And then we can have F for frame. And I definitely want a stroke here with F. And I want this to be roughly 343 pixels. And I want this to be 16. Yes. And then what I can do is, so we can have the stretch either across the whole margin, so that will be left and right, or like in this design, we can get them smaller than the text. We can do both of these things. So I'm gonna copy the design. So I'm just gonna reduce its width. So let's see. I'm just gonna reduce the width a bit more, and that looks pretty good, maybe 296. And then I'm gonna add text, your name, and this will be enter, and this will be 14 and not bolded. And that looks pretty good. And this will be the name field. And I'm gonna press Alt to drag this, and that will be your email. And this will be email field. And for better usability, usually you want to have these as labels outside, but for this design's copy purposes, I'm gonna keep it. I'm gonna drag it here. And this is gonna be our sign up. So I'm gonna add the auto layout. I'm gonna center it. And I want this to be fixed width that is centered. And I want this to be 296. And I want this to be sign up. And I want the frame color to be, so this is a stroke right now. To switch, I'm gonna use my shortcut Shift X. And boom. And now I'm gonna move the sign up button inside our form. I'm gonna get our form to be bigger. I'm gonna give it an auto layout, and I'm gonna give it, so I want the content to be centered, and I want the content to have maybe 36 pixel left, 6 pixel right, 36 pixel top, 36 pixel bottom, and maybe each element here might have 24 pixels. And that doesn't look bad actually. Maybe less, maybe 16. Yeah, that looks better. Certainly that looks better. And 375, and let's check, 296, 296. And that looks pretty good. I think that's our mobile design. I'm gonna press Ctrl+Shift+4 to check my alignments to the left. That looks good. Hamburger menu placement looks good. I'm gonna check 16 pixels roughly, 16 pixels here, 16 pixels here. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. And that is the mobile design, and that is how you use layouts so that you can use your consistency and spacing way better when you are designing a UI, whether that is in desktop or mobile. Thanks for watching this video, guys. And if you really like this content and you want to learn more about how to use Figma to become a better UI UX designer, please make sure you subscribe to this video channel, because I post twice a week on this YouTube channel, and if you subscribe you will get a notification so that we can stay in touch.